One night he woke up and said to his wife at 55 years of age, "You know what? I think I've got a chance. I think I could go back in and reclaim my championship." Welcome back to the Gunners Club. You're here with Gunner, of course, with Seuss, and we think we've just seen one of the most overhyped productions in the history of television. Now, give the people what they want. If it's bread and circuses, why not? And what did you think of the fight?
I thought Tyson was incredibly brave at 58 to get into a ring with a 27-year-old guy who was a monster and had reach that was just amazing.
Yeah, in terms of height, there wasn't a lot of difference between the two. In terms of weight, there wasn't a lot of difference between the two. In terms of height, there was about 3 inches of difference. In terms of reach, there was a whopping 5 inches of difference. And boy, wasn't it used during the fight. Was it a fight that had to happen at all? Yeah. Was it really just an academic exercise? I think it's one of those things that probably should have stayed in the pages of fan fiction or been maybe, the topic of another Rocky film. I understand they're actually looking at making yet another Rocky film. Now, some of these dreams are not overly impossible. Let's think of George Foreman at 45, came back against all odds and became the oldest heavyweight champion of the world. He managed it and was still defending. Ended up losing that title at 48 years of age. One night he woke up and said to his wife at 55 years of age, "You know what? I think I've got a chance. I think I could go back in and reclaim my championship." And she said to him, "You know what, love, I think that's great, but I prefer that you keep thinking that."
That's it.
And I think that's what should have happened, in fact, today. First 2 rounds, from what I understand, the Netflix panel were giving that to Mike Tyson. I can't really understand why. What I could see was that there was a lot of trepidation, a lot of respect between the two fighters. They were searching each other out and making sure that they didn't have too much damage done to them. Mike Tyson was dipping left, dipping right, and going back into that famous peekaboo mode. The problem was he wasn't actually entering into a zone where he could cause damage. He was simply doing it for effect. Now, it wasn't as though he was feigning or slipping punches, and it wasn't as though he was coming in and closing the distance when he was doing it. It was like he was trying to mimic or summons back the spirit that he had when he was a younger man. Now, 31 years is a hell of a lot of ground to cover.
That's yeah. I mean, look, I don't know whether this was done for the money, purely for the publicity, or whether they're going to share the goodies that comes out of this, purely a publicity stunt. But in any event, you got to give Tyson the heart to go into that ring at that age against a bloke half his age.
Oh, wow.
Tyson's final victory was against Clifford Etienne, the show of respect. That fight lasted 49 seconds. This one goes 16 minutes. And it ends at the final bell, and what a moment.
We go to the judges' scorecards for the official decision. Judge David Yakubuchi sees the contest 80-72, while judges Lawrence Cole and Jesse Reyes see it 79-73, declaring your winner by unanimous decision, Jake Elgin.
Well,
that's amazing.
I don't really know. I think there's always a story about that one fight where a fighter realizes that he's aged a decade. And usually if it's not actually during the fight or at the very end when the bell rings, if you've been in a few boxing bouts, it's usually 3 o'clock in the morning when you wake up and you discover you have been hit in the ribs. You have been hit rather hard in the temple. And talk about the temple shots. I think the right hand hook, that's something which we expected in this fight.
Yep.
And it's something which Paul has had a lot of success in his previous fights. Certainly came into play in this. There were right hooks which were unanswered. In some cases, there was even the combination where he was getting the rights and the lefts in together. In terms of his jabs, he could sit right back with that extra 5 inches of reach.
That's right.
And basically just hit Tyson at will. And really that's quite a sad thing to see, because we're used to this god, this man we've deified as being the baddest man on the planet. But to see him basically being hit at will is quite a sore point. Now, the fight was obviously doctored, so we got some sort of a performance. Now, in my early days, I remember a coach planning a boxing festival, and we were getting the cards together, and he said, no, you don't understand. We don't really care about who wins. What we're trying to do is to get a contest for each fight.
Yep.
Now, that's usually all right up to the level, but not including sanction fights. This was a sanction fight. What that means is that it was professionally scored. It means that it was accredited. It also means that, unfortunately for Mike Tyson, it's another loss on his record. And it seems to be the thing that boxers who have got these hallowed careers seem to tail off towards the end of their careers and fight those extra fights that they didn't need to, and have that real blemish upon their scorecards. Seeing Tyson move, I mentioned the way that he was slipping left and right, peekaboo style, without actually feigning or slipping for any purpose or closing the distance. But he wasn't able to use his footwork to move in or to move out. For example, that's something that we saw with a later day Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Now, this was a guy who would literally float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. But in his older, later, sadder fights, I would say, he certainly couldn't do that. And it's a little bit traumatic to see that echoed again tonight.
I agree with you. There is the other side, that although Paul won, and he won decisively,
yeah.
Right, at the end of the day, okay, he can say, I'm the man who beat Mike Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The downside to that same thing is that everyone's going to say, what are you bragging about? You beat a 58-year-old man.
I think this is really something that should have just stayed as an exhibition fight, but Paul is an exhibitionist in any event.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
You can make of that what you will. I think not a great night for boxing. It's certainly great and inspiring for somebody like myself to think that at my age, and I'm still trying to practice my boxing 5 days a week in my 50s, it gets harder. It gets harder and harder to do it. It gets harder to keep the weight off. The pains that you get in your joints, they're very real. You slow down. You think that you're a hero. The things which we saw in practice for Mike Tyson were him doing pad work and bag work, moments where he was not getting hit back.
Yep.
Once you start to get hit back and you start to age, it's a very different thing. You know, you have a fight, you might get hit a couple of times, you find yourself in bed for 3 days, and the wife sort of leaves you alone and doesn't ask what happened in the ring, but just understands that maybe it wasn't a good move. I feel for Mike Tyson tonight. They say that pride goes before the fall. He seems to be a man who's been reconciling with the nature of who he is as a person, and I think he's been growing a lot in that regards too. But it's still going to be a loss and a realisation for him tonight. It's going to be that fight where I think he's aged that 30-odd years.
Oh, most definitely. I still take my hat off to him for having the heart to actually step in that ring with that guy.
I just want to say, regarding Paul with his boxing ability, he was very clever. He was very ring smart. He made sure in the first couple of rounds when he was almost trapped into the corners that never happened again. He made sure that when he moved in, he moved out quickly. He played to the reach that he had. And he was starting to play with some combination shots as well. Very predictable fighter. We expect the big right hooks, though he was throwing in some successful left hooks and a few explorative jabs to the body as well. Would have liked to have seen a few more uppercuts. I think they would have made the fight really, really interesting and would have closed the fight up.
If this was a younger Tyson, seeing videos of his fights from his previous exploits, he wouldn't have stayed away and out of reach. He would have come straight in. Okay, I'll get hit a few times, but this is where my overhand comes in. And he wasn't risking it this time. He wasn't coming in like he used to as a younger man.
No, I think he feels his own mortality. A few fights back, when he quit boxing in the ring and he said, I just don't have it in me anymore, I think that really should have been the finish of the career from what we saw.
And he would have still walked away as this mythological creature who, was the pinnacle
Without doubt.
of a badass.
Without doubt. But don't forget, there's always the Masters games. You can always pick on someone your own age.
Yeah, well, that's it. Actually, wouldn't that be something? I'd like to see another 58-year-old boxer with his fitness level come in. And wow.
He did essentially do something like that during COVID. There was that exhibition fight. And I think during that fight, he was a real gentleman. I think it was exhibition, so they gave a share as to who won. That's what an exhibition fight is. But I think that he was actually the gentleman in that fight. He could have put his opponent away. If you like what you see, join us for more adventures.
If it's out there, we'll talk about it. And if it's controversial, we'll talk about it even more.
We'll see you on the next adventure.
Catch you on the next one, guys.